Mr. Justice Prakash Srivastava, Chairperson, and honorable members of National Green Tribunal, officers of NGT Registry, eminent resource persons, delegates coming from different parts of the nation, faculty members, dear students, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste and a very good afternoon to all of you. I, S. Vinita, Registrar General, on behalf of National Green Tribunal and my own behalf, extend a warm and cordial welcome in the first technical session of the National Conference on Environment 2025. In a nation with such vivid cultural heritage, it is said, Atithi Devo Bhava. That means guests are equivalent to God. We are honored with the presence of our distinguished chair and panelists today. Commencing with the felicitation, I would most humbly request Honorable Mr. Justice Arun Kumar Tyagi, Judicial Member, National Green Tribunal, Principal Bench, to kindly welcome and felicitate Honorable Mr. Justice Joy Malia Bagchi, Judge, Supreme Court of India, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Thank you, sir. Now, I would humbly request Dr. Vijay Kulkarni, Expert Member, National Green Tribunal, Western Zonal Bench, Pune, to kindly welcome and felicitate Honorable Mrs. Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana, Honorable Judicial Member, National Green Tribunal, Southern Zone Bench, Chennai, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Thank you, sir. Moving further, I would now request Shri Vijayakant N, Registrar, National Green Tribunal, Southern Zone Bench, Chennai, to welcome and felicitate Shri Tanmay Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, New Delhi, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Thank you, sir. Next, I would request Shri S.S. Ojha, Registrar, National Green Tribunal, Western Zonal Bench, Pune, to welcome and felicitate Dr. Randeep Guleria, Chairman, Institute of Internal Medicine, Medanta Medical School, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Next in line, I would most humbly request Shri D.K. Singh, Registrar, National Green Tribunal, Central Zonal Bench, Bhopal, to welcome and felicitate Dr. Dilip Ganguly, Professor, Center for Atmospheric Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Thank you, sir. I would now request Shri Deepto Ghosh, Registrar, National Green Tribunal, Eastern Zonal Bench, Kolkata, to welcome Ms. Soumya Swaminathan, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, by presenting a sapling and a memento. Thank you, sir. With the permission of Chair, I declare the commencement of the first technical session. I would now most humbly invite our moderator for today, Ms. Soumya Swaminathan, to the rostrum and continue with the session. Thank you and namaste.
Namaskar and good afternoon to everyone. I would like to thank the National Green Tribunal and UNEP for having organized this absolutely important consultation at this time, and also for having included me as part of this session that's going to be talking about air quality management. Respected dignitaries on the dais and members of the legal profession, and all the experts who are gathered here today. The objectives of this conference are fourfold. One is really to have this kind of stakeholder consultation where we hear from experts coming from different fields, bringing their own thoughts and scientific evidence to the table. The second is to deliberate on the burning issues that face all of us. And as we heard in the inaugural session, with the President also mentioning the fact that there is increasing pollution of air, water, land, loss of biodiversity, and on top of that, of course, climate change, increasing urbanization. All of this is actually impacting our health and our well-being. And this is why the government has taken so many steps, and then NGT itself has played an extremely important role really in trying to regulate some of the environmental risks to health. The third goal is to promote environmental awareness. There are many aspects that we will be discussing today where the science is evolving and changing constantly, and we need to update ourselves, both on ways of measuring the problem, but also more importantly on solutions. And then the fourth is the sharing of the best practices, because we can learn from each other, whether it's learning from other countries that have been able to cut air pollution, who also faced even worse levels about 10 or 20 years ago, and within a matter of a decade have made significant progress. So I think none of the problems that we are discussing today are unsurmountable. There are solutions, and it's a question of really implementing them. So in this session, we will try to discuss both from the health side. So we have Dr. Randeep Guleria, who will talk to us about the impacts of air pollution on health. We will hear from the IIT Delhi, Professor Ganguly, on the ways in which we can measure, but also what are the sources of the air pollution that we're talking about that we need to address, and what could be some of those solutions. And then, of course, we have Shri Tanmay Kumarji, who's the Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, who will tell us about the government's initiatives, and Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana ji, who's a judicial member from the NGT South, and she has requested actually that she would speak after hearing from the technical experts, and so maybe we will change the order a little bit because she would like to perhaps keep that in mind as she responds to some of the issues that are raised. We already heard in the opening session this morning the importance and the very fact that air quality has been included in this two-day deliberations. I think there is no doubt in anybody's mind that it is a very urgent issue, not just because the air pollution looks bad or it's an environmental hazard, but much more importantly, it's a health hazard. The WHO conference on air pollution just concluded yesterday in Colombia, and they have released the latest estimates of the number of deaths that are reported due to air pollution globally. As you know, the WHO has a very stringent cutoff of 5 micrograms per cubic meter of PM 2.5, and a total of 15 actually as an annual cutoff, and most developing countries are far above that level, and India is no exception. It's estimated about 7 million lives are lost just due to air pollution alone globally. In India, it's about 1.8 million on an average, on an annual basis. And air pollution today, that includes indoor and outdoor air pollution, is the second leading risk factor for health after high blood pressure. So it is globally one of the most important things to address, and therefore it is really, really good that we begin to discuss that issue today, and at the end of the session, hopefully have some very clear recommendations forward. With those words, I'd like to request Honorable Shri Justice Joy Malia Bagchi, from the Supreme Court of India, to make his opening remarks. Thank you.
My co-panelists, Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana, Judicial Member, Southern Zone NGT, Tanmay Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Dr. Guleria, Dr. Dilip Kumar Ganguly, and the moderator, Madam Soumya Swaminathan. The esteemed audience, comprising of Honorable Chief Justices, Judges of the High Court, the Chairman of NGT, Justice Srivastav, other judicial members of NGT, Judges of District Judiciary, ladies and gentlemen, and dear students, a very good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I feel humbled to be invited by the chairman of NGT to chair the first technical session on a very important and pivotal issue of maintaining air quality and the role of the regulatory bodies in the measuring of the quality of air and provide solutions for better living in society. As all of us stand today in the heart of India's capital, that is Delhi, a city steeped in history, culture, and ceaseless energy, we cannot overlook the thick haze that often hangs over its skyline, particularly in the winter months. For many, the smog-choked air, the relentless traffic, and the fumes from industry has become an accepted reality. It is, as some would say, is a scourge of urban development. Is that so? If one delves into the recent report published by an international organization, it is not Delhi, but an unknown hamlet in a state which is known as the abode of clouds, Meghalaya, Birnihart, which is said to be the most polluted place in the world. Why is this so? Pollution today, and particularly air pollution, knows no bounds. It's not on premise of elitism of urbanity. It is not a premise of rural backgrounds, but it is a cloud which has descended over the entire world and is polluting the very air that we breathe. This is a stark reminder that it is not restricted only to Delhi or an unknown hamlet in Meghalaya. The evils of air pollution permeates the entire humankind and is a systemic global crisis that demands collective action from all the stakeholders of society. A 2024 study lays bare a sobering reality. 1.4 billion people of India are residing, living, breathing in an atmosphere which has 2.5 PM concentration or more in the air that exceeds World Health Organization guidelines. Coming even to the Indian National Ambient Air Quality Standards, 81.9% of the population, that is 1.1 billion people, live in breathe air which is unhealthy. This statistics captures only a fraction because it speaks of the pollution of 2.5 PM only. It leaves behind pollutions in the form of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, or PM10. India is a youthful and aspiring nation. Many feel enforcing stricter regulations will hinder India's industrial and economic progress, arguing as a nation of the global south, India cannot afford to be shackled by the very standards imposed by the developed West. They claim in the long run, opportunity cost of India's economic expansion will ultimately bring both financial and health benefits to the nation. However, this line of thinking overlooks India's commitment to sustainable development. As emphasized by the Supreme Court in MC Mehta, the right to life under Article 21 requires health to be given precedence over wealth. After all, true progress is not measured solely in economic terms, but by our ability to balance development with the well-being and health of our people. What will we do with money if we cannot breathe and live in future? Even in pure economic terms, the menace of air pollution imposes a significant financial burden on the country. As per 2020 study conducted at the behest of Ministry of Environment, 1.6 million deaths in India were attributable to air pollution, as flagged by the learned moderator, accounting for 17.8% of total deaths. So almost 1 in 5 Indian who has died during this period was suffering from some form of ailment due to air pollution. The economic loss caused due to these premature deaths was found to be $36.8 billion, that is 1.36% of the India's GDP in 2019. Thus, it is evident deteriorating air quality is not merely an unfortunate trade-off for economic growth. It is, in fact, a direct impediment to it. Even beyond economic costs, we must confront a far graver reality. Our failure to combat air pollution is actively accelerating climate change. The very pollutants that contaminate the air we breathe, such as carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, not only endanger life and well-being, but trap heat in the atmosphere and disrupt weather patterns. Simply put, every failure to control air pollution is a step towards irreversible climate catastrophe. Today we look forward to a situation where climate change will be the main factors for human displacement, climate refugees, and for the developing world, climate debt will be the bigger challenges for which we need to be prepared in the future years. If we do not act now, the conversations we have today, like colloquiums organized at the behest of NGT, may be rendered futile, as future generations may never experience the clean air and the thriving environment we so often take for granted. Therefore, addressing air pollution is not just a matter of public health. It is a necessity for Earth's survival and fight against climate change. Recognizing this fundamental truth that the world is one family, India ratified the Kyoto Protocol in 2002 At the heart of this commitment lies the principle of common but differential responsibilities, which acknowledge while climate change is a shared global challenge, historical emissions and deep-seated economic disparities, largely inflicted by the developed nations, necessitate differentiated commitments. India reaffirmed this principle when it ratified the Paris Agreement on October 2nd, 2016, aligning itself with a global effort to limit temperature rise to 1.5 to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Today, unfortunately, this is a chimera which has sunk in the Baku summit. However, as seen at the Baku summit, the failure of the international community to establish a robust global climate fund, one that is proportionately financed by the developed world, has forced India to take a more proactive measure on the domestic front. We, as the members of the Global South, have to live up to the expectations of the world at large because the developed nations have failed us and have not committed themselves to the extent to which they ought to have in creating a global fund for climate change and save the majority of the population from deprivation, displacement, and death. Rising to this challenge, India has embraced its constitutional duty as a welfare state, spearheading ambitious domestic initiatives to combat climate change. Complementing the government's efforts, the Indian judiciary has also played a crucial role in addressing the escalating crisis of air pollution, reinforcing nations' unwavering commitment to environmental protection despite persistent inequities in global climate finance. In a powerful affirmation, the Supreme Court, as well as the Delhi High Court, in November 2024, directed the central and state governments to proactively enforce GRAP 3 and GRAP 4 measures across National Capital Territory of Delhi and its neighboring states. The court not only emphasized the necessity of preemptive action, but also reaffirmed the collective responsibility of all stakeholders in ensuring a pollution-free environment for citizens. Significantly, following these directives, Delhi NCR witnessed a marked improvement in air quality, with air quality index dropping to 300 by February 2025, a testament to the impact of decisive and legal and administrative action. One fundamental area requires deeper introspection is the effective management of stubble, which is attributed to be one of the contributors to air pollution. Rather than being burnt, stubble can be repurposed in various ways. For instance, stubble is not only a key ingredient in the production of ethanol, a greener alternative to conventional fuel, but also plays a crucial role in manufacture of cardboard. In fact, in an inspiring instance, a small farmer from Jalandhar, Punjab, embraced sustainability by using stubble as the sole raw material for cardboard production. Drawing inspiration from the farmer's ingenuity, we can explore more such opportunities to develop low-cost, high-profit sunrise industries that promote environment protection instead of degradation. It is noteworthy that the Union government has launched a mass movement titled Lifestyle for Environment, which aims to combat climate at the community level. This initiative encourages the youth to address climate change through individual and community-driven actions by being mindful of the values of conservation and moderation for sustainable and environment-friendly development. While the role of the state and grassroots organizations in combating climate change is commendable, it is equally imperative to recognize the transformative potential of private players in driving sustainable development. India is actively developing policies in line with the United Nations Environment, Social Governance (ESG) agenda, particularly Goal 13, which calls for urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. These frameworks aim to cultivate an ecosystem where the resource of the private sector can be leveraged for sustainable development. A significant step in this direction is the notification of the Green Credit Rules 2023. This initiative establishes a market-based mechanism to incentivize environmentally positive actions such as afforestation, air pollution reduction, and sustainable agriculture. By generating green credits, which can be traded on a regulated domestic market, the system encourages corporate environmental responsibility by integrating sustainability into economic policymaking. Another crucial development in green financing is the promotion of green social and sustainability or GSS bonds, which are classified as ESG debt securities under the 2021 SEBI regulations. These bonds serve a dual purpose. They direct funds exclusively towards environment and social objects, ensuring that financial growth is aligned with India's international obligations to promote financing investments that comply with low greenhouse gas emissions and climate resilient development. As India pushes forward with its ambitious renewable energy expansion, the sector urgently needs a steady flow of capital. This challenge presents an unique opportunity to encourage the establishment of a private climate fund modeled on the Green Climate Fund on the international plane. Such a framework would allow corporations to fulfill their corporate social responsibility by strategically directing contributions towards the large-scale net zero and green initiatives. I would consider it very apposite to discuss policies undertaken by China, where the sunrise industries are regulated to pass on a certain portion of their profits in their books of accounts into the compensatory funds for payment of compensations for the sunset industries, so as to create a development which is sustainable and aligned with the requirements of environmental protection. At this moment, when we are faced with a question not as to what to do, but what we must do now, it may be appropriate to remind ourselves of the wisdom of our sages encapsulated in the Rig Veda. And I quote, "Thousands and hundreds of years, if you wish to enjoy the fruits and happiness of life, then take up the systemic planting of trees." Planting of trees, greening the atmosphere, living in a manner where the Gandhian talisman that the world has enough for our needs and not for our greed is the need of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, I eagerly await the wise counsel from the panelists who are experts in various fields to give us a solution to the problem which we must solve, lest we will suffocate and die. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for those opening remarks and very, very thought-provoking and wise comments. So with the permission of Justice Pushpa, ma'am, would you like to speak now? Please, I'd like to invite Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana from the Southern Zone NGT to deliver her remarks.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. I wouldn't waste much of time. After what has been enlightened by our Honorable Justice, what I will be doing is only the repeat of the same. But however, I would like to highlight certain points from my experience for the last 3 years as the judicial member of the National Green Tribunal. Exactly the problems what we are unable to crack. Not that I would be very critical about it, but at times I may have to. How the entire pollution level starts, how was it tackled historically, and how was the environmental awareness in India, everybody should know and knows. We would have heard from grandma stories, and what the Honorable President of India this morning very emotionally put it also. So even for a cutting of a tree, how she could express her feelings. So it starts from there. And even in ancient, it is not that we are looking at all the solutions and department-wise schemes to address all this. Even in those days, Chanakya, in his Arthashastra, he has emphasized environmental stability as essential for political and economic order. I quote, "A king should be diligent in foreseeing the possibility of calamities and try to avert them before they arise." Are we doing it now? We have allowed it to happen. We are trying to set back things. And even in the ancient days, the step wells, what you can see one in Gujarat or Rajasthan, and the floating gardens in Dal Lake, everything, they used the sustainable land use adapted and the local environmental conditions. And as our Honorable Minister this morning quoted, Prithvi, the concept of Prithvi is sacred, promoted the environmental stewardship. So nature is the art of God. Now to particularize only the air pollution, of which I'm asked to speak about. The early awareness of the air pollution was there even in those days of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. When we look into the architecture, all well ventilated homes with cross ventilation, they minimize the smoke and the accumulation. If you draw a parallel globally also, the ancient Rome, it banned certain manufacturers near residential areas. And in the medieval times, King Edward I, he banned the first burning of the sea coal in London to reduce the smog. And come to India, the colonial and the post-independence pollution. The pollution what today we are facing is based on the British-led industrialization, introduced new pollution sources. So now we have the other modern pollution challenges also. The pollution now transcends local boundaries, affecting distant regions. The traditional community-based practices are inadequate for the modern pollution levels. Now transition from the traditional to modern pollution. There is a shift from the natural to the synthetic pollution. When we talk about the ancient pollution, it was limited only to domestic fires, dust, and human waste. But today, the modern pollution stems from the industrialization, urbanization, and consumerism. Today's sources of pollution include industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, plastics, and synthetic chemicals, and food products. Another challenge which is hard now is the microplastics and modern complexity. The microplastic particles from synthetic textiles and tire wear are now present in the air, which we have never seen. Even the clothes what we wear, and when the cars in which we travel, the friction of the tire, what it creates, what we are inhaling. So these particles, they penetrate into the lung tissues and enter the bloodstream, causing inflammation and increasing respiratory and cardiovascular problems. This, I think, our moderator today, who is from World Health Organization, in fact, in her very recent article which appeared on the World Tuberculosis Day, I think on March 24th, in one of the opinion piece published in the Hindu, she has stated, India has made significant advances in TB detection and treatment. TB incidence in India declined by 17.7%, that is 237 per 1 lakh population in 2015 to 195 per 1 lakh population in 2023, largely due to the improved diagnosis. However, polluted air weakens the lung immunity, increasing vulnerability to TB and reducing the effectiveness of the treatment. PM 2.5 and the nitrogen oxides trigger the inflammation, which increases the likelihood of latent TB infection becoming active. I think that is what the opinion given by our moderator today. This apart, we also have the occupational health risks. Air pollution disproportionately affects workers, industries involving construction, mining, and waste processing. And all over India, the mining is happening, and the major litigants are the miners before the Pollution Control Board and the NGT. So far, for the first time in one of the matters, we came across the word called silicosis. So the air pollution disproportionately affects workers, and the silicosis is a lung disease caused by inhaling a fine silica dust. That has become a major public health issue in states like Rajasthan and Jharkhand. Does it mean that we have to stop mining, or whether we have any solutions for these workers who work in these mines? See, the workers in the stone quarries and the coal mines are at high risk due to this silicosis, and the dust control has to be adequate. Then children's health goes without saying. And our Honorable Justice also was mentioning about the economic burden. The economic cost of the air pollution in India is staggering. According to a study by the World Bank, air pollution costs India $150 billion annually in lost productivity and increased healthcare expenses. Now, how do we regulate the air pollution? The Stockholm Conference and constitutional amendments came. The Constitution was amended, the 42nd Amendment, introducing Article 48A, which directed the states to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife. It doesn't stop with that. It gives every one of the Indian citizens to have a fundamental duty under Article 41A, G and H, establish a fundamental duty for every Indian citizen to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. So after this was introduced the Air Pollution Act 1981, which of course prescribes certain mechanisms for which the central and the state pollution control boards were constituted, and the power was given to declare air pollution control areas, then industry licensing, penalties and prosecution, and vehicle emission norms, etc. After the Bhopal gas tragedy in '84, the Environmental Protection Act was brought in. It gave the central government broad powers to regulate the environmental standards and enforce the compliance. They have the centralized authority, then environmental impact assessments to be done, and for any violations, penalties would be imposed. The Motor Vehicles Act is yet another thing where, now when I said the pollution caused by the tire friction, I think Motor Vehicle Act also has to address on that. The judicial pronouncements which has been regulating and also guiding are very many. And particularly in Delhi, the Taj trapezium case in 1996, the court ordered to relocate about 200 odd industries or factories. That was a real groundbreaking judgment. From the shift them from located next to Taj Mahal. Then the Delhi vehicular pollution case, the Honorable Supreme Court's mandate to convert Delhi's public transport to CNG temporarily only improved the air quality, but those gains have also since eroded. Vehicle ownership has surged. So nobody looks at the growing vehicle population. per day, how many lakhs of vehicles being released, and what is the emission control we have, all that is yet to be addressed. Then comes this stubble burning case. The court's directive to establish the Commission to Air Quality Management was meant to create an interstate mechanism for handling the pollution from stubble burning. However, the political resistance from Punjab and Haryana, where farmers see the stubble burning as economically necessary, was left the CAQM with limited authority. Despite all these judicial pronouncements, then comes also the Sterlite copper plant case and then Kolkata fly ash case. But why legal action alone has failed or it is taking off? That is because the structural weaknesses in India's regulatory framework. We should have the fragmented authority, the weak political will, and then absence of long-term accountability and inadequate technical capacity. On these four major things, I think the country has to improve on. Now coming to air pollution monitoring and mitigation. The initiatives taken by the government of Tamil Nadu to mitigate air pollution, that is also by, not really Tamil Nadu, even across the country, the Bharat Stage emission standards and promotion of electric vehicles, industrial emission control, air quality monitoring and enforcement, National Clean Air Program, dust control measures, waste management, etc. The studies, the reports, whether they are based on region-wise, how it is being done, that is $1 million question. What has been set by the international standards, if we are going to adopt it, whether it will be helping us. The Honorable Justice spoke about the air quality standards of 2.5 microgram per cubic meter, whether it is for 24 hours or annually. According to me, they certainly require revision. The existing standards and international comparisons when you do, the national air ambient quality, the pollutant, if it is particulate matter 2.5, annually it is only 40 microgram per cubic meter, whereas WHO guidelines say it is only 5 microgram per cubic meter. So it is more than 8 times. And in the US environmental policy, it says only 9 micrograms. Similarly, for the 24 hours, it is more than 4 times. Given the significant health impact on air pollution, there is an urgent need to align these NAAQs with global best practice, particularly in India, which has surged and we are the number 1 in the population, whether the same standards can be adopted internationally, what has been prescribed for India. Given the significant health impact and the air pollution, there is an urgent need to align NAAQs with the global best practices. While doing that, what are the challenges that we are facing? The weak enforcement and the industry and the political resistance, limited public awareness, and also the lack of regional customization. For implementing region-specific air quality standards based on pollution levels, we have to establish stricter compliance mechanism and penalties for violations, strengthen the role of scientific research and policy formulation. The policy formulations, I would say the judicial action has laid the groundwork for stronger regulation, but structural and political reforms are necessary to ensure long-term success. Primarily, there should be a transition to renewable energy. The coal-based thermal power plants contribute 70% of India's SO2 emissions. While the national solar mission targets 280 gigawatt of solar capacity by 2030, execution has been very slow due to land acquisition issues and grid infrastructure gaps. So these have to be addressed immediately. And closing older and the higher emission plants in urban industrial zones would directly improve the air quality in cities like Mumbai and Kolkata. And expanding the renewable energy capacity requires better coordination between the Ministry of Power and state governments to streamline the land acquisition and infrastructure development. Germany's phased coal plant closures under the Energiewende policy provide a model for balancing industrial transition with economic stability. This policy can be replicated in India also. And the culprit for the air pollution is the vehicular emissions, which has to be addressed immediately, either by controlling the surge of vehicles coming up on the roads or bringing in stricter measures. The agricultural waste management, the stubble burning. So there are judicial directives on stubble burning which have failed, I should say, and the weak economic incentives for the farmers. So converting the crop residue into biochar through controlled pyrolysis would create a marketable product for soil enhancement while reducing emissions. Biogas plants and pellet manufacturing facilities could also provide alternative revenue streams for farmers. So the government and also the courts have to look into addressing these stubble burning issues when they try to convert the agricultural waste into energy and incentivize the farmers, which would, I think, will be well received by the farmers. Instead of simply addressing the issue as an issue, it is high time that we find a solution. And then the waste management and international trade regulation. The recent, one of the news what I came across was in the BBC investigation that 70% of the imported tires from the UK are processed illegally in India, releasing toxic gases and contributing to air pollution. This has not been highlighted anywhere. And we should not make our beautiful country into a dumping yard where they come and dump all the waste from other countries. And particularly this tire dumping is really causing concern. So the next comes the microplastic regulation, which is again a cause for air pollution. Introducing regulations to ban microbeads and mandate filtration in washing machines could reduce microplastic discharge into wastewater systems. Then the Japan's mandatory filtration requirements for industrial facilities provide a model for India's textile and chemical industries. Then promoting biodegradable materials and natural fibers would reduce the plastic load at the source. Then to speak about air pollution, it is never ending and it is a continuous process which has to be curtailed. And now the government's policy to introduce electric vehicle again poses a problem of battery recycle. So that has to be addressed first. The stubble burning, that also we can convert it into something creative. So these are all the problems which we face when the industries come to us, and also we are also trying to solve these issues in a most agreeable manner, in a win-win situation. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for highlighting the challenges, but also proposing several solutions. And I think learned members of the audience would be in the best position to really think through these various regulatory and legal challenges, that we have, and fill any loopholes that have been identified. I would now like to request Shri Tanmay Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, to make his remarks.
Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. Respected Chair, Honorable Sri Justice Joymala Bagchi, sir, Honorable Judge, Supreme Court of India, distinguished panelist, Honorable Srimati Justice Pushpa Satyanarayan, Judicial Member, NGT Southern Zone, Dr. Randeep Guleria ji, ex-Director AIMS, and Head of Institute of Internal Medicine, Medanta Medical School, Dr. Dilip Ganguly, Professor, Center for Atmospheric Sciences, IIT Delhi. Ms. Soumya Swaminathan, Moderator, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Respected Chairperson, NGT, Shri Prakash Srivastava, sir. Honorable Judicial and Expert Members of NGT, Honorable Judges of High Courts, my colleagues in various state governments, Chairperson of Central Pollution Control Boards, domain experts, stakeholders, and dear students. A very good afternoon to all of you. Let me begin by complimenting NGT Chairperson and his team for organizing this conference, for bringing together all of us together to deliberate on this important issue that all of us collectively face. Honorable Justice Joymala Bagchi sir and Honorable Srimati Justice Pushpa Satyanarayana madam have already dwelt at length on the various issues related to air pollution, the causal effects, the remedies, the shortcomings, and have also suggested way forward. I would not be dwelling at length on all those issues, basically trying to be brief, but in the forthcoming 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes that I'll be speaking to you, I'll be trying to focus on the subject of air pollution, the scientific background to it. We'll try to focus on the measuring, how do you monitor and supervise that, what is the legal framework for that, what are the policies and programs in short, and what is our role and responsibility. So just to begin by focusing on the subject matter of air quality rather than getting into the subject of climate change, the global warming, the carbon emissions that have been dealt at length previously also in his opening remark by Honorable Minister for Environment, Forest and Climate Change, by Justice Bagchi sir and my predecessors. So leaving that apart, trying to focus on air pollution. The topic of today's discussions, air quality monitoring and management in reference to rising air pollution, is something that concerns all of us, as clean air is crucial for our physical, mental and spiritual well-being, something that we cannot live without. This conference provides us an opportunity to collectively deliberate on this crucial issue from the scientific point of view, from the administrative point of view, from regulatory or legalistic point of view, from the health point of view, and most of all, from the citizens' perspective. Air quality management and control is a multidisciplinary, cross-sectoral, inter-ministerial subject involving administrative control, supervision and monitoring, bringing about synergy between various ministries, monitoring and supervision at all tiers of governance from the central level to the grassroots level. Air quality touches the lives of all of us and also flora and fauna, and is crucial for all forms of life. The causes of air pollution vary from location to location, and remedial measures also vary from location to location and have to be therefore arrived at scientifically in close collaboration with the scientific institutions, research organizations, citizens groups and others. A very short introduction about the science of air pollution. Air pollution, as is understood in a common parlance, is quite different from the way it is in scientific terms. Air pollution is governed by airshed, which is a geographical area governed by a particular topography, weather and atmospheric conditions. Within a given airshed region, which has its own geographical area, the concentration and movement of air, pollutants, follow their own pattern. Air pollution is affected by different sources: dust, including construction demolition waste, vehicular pollution, industrial pollution, burning of waste, and may get compounded by other factors which contribute to air pollution over a short interval of time, which we call episodic events, which have been referred to by my previous speakers. Broadly speaking, the key air pollutants are PM10 and PM2.5. PM10 and PM2.5 denote the size of the particulate matter, 10 microns and 2.5 microns. 1 micron is 10 to the power minus 6 meters. These particulate matters, which are less than 10 micron or 2.5 microns in size, are the main cause of air pollution in our country. So if air pollution is to be managed, similar sources in the entire airshed would need to be addressed. And that is why the ministry is working for an integrated airshed management program in the Indo-Gangetic Basin, and another NCAP source apportionment studies are required to be carried out to ascertain the sources of pollution. And therefore, the remedial measures are then aligned with these sources of pollution. Air pollution is also affected by meteorological factors and conditions such as topography, temperature conditions, wind speed, rainfall, location, etc. Now coming to the measurement aspect of it, air quality is measured through the National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Program as per the mandate under the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981 to collect, compile and disseminate information on air quality. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change along with the Central Pollution Control Board notified the National Ambient Air Quality Standards in 2009 for measuring and taking necessary corrective action for the protection of health and environment from air pollution. The National Air Quality Index, which we now call the AQI, which you are all familiar with, was launched in 2015. Under the NAMP, both manual and continuous ambient air quality monitoring stations have been set up for measuring air quality. And these are being set up not only by the central government through the Central Pollution Control Board, but also by the State Pollution Control Board, the pollution control committees, which have come forward and have set up their own monitoring stations in their own jurisdiction. The legal framework has been dealt with at length by ma'am previously. The chronological sequence of events, the Environment Protection Act, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, the empowerment of the pollution control boards, the consent to operate conditions, the consent to establish conditions, all those provide the legal framework for, monitoring, control, supervision of air quality. Central to this framework are the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, which were notified in 2009, which serve as benchmarks for air quality monitoring and mitigation efforts in the country. While WHO sets the guidelines, the standards have been set up by the Central Pollution Control Board for our country. The IA notification 2006 and subsequent amendments ensure that projects with potential environment impacts undergo rigorous appraisal before approval and are then, accompanied by the environmental safeguards, the specific conditions, the general conditions, which ensure that the environment remains protected. The NGT Act 2010 provides for swiftly addressing environmental matters. Recently, past couple of years, the CAQM Act was also passed, which provides for a framework for air quality management in Delhi NCR and adjoining areas. The CAQM has been vested with the powers to issue directions and enforce air pollution mitigation actions, which have been referred to by the previous speakers. Besides this, the Central Pollution Control Board has identified 38 critically and 31 severely polluted industrial areas in the country based on the Comprehensive Environment Pollution Index, which uses advanced algorithms to analyze pollutant sources, pathways, and receptors. The scientific and data-driven approach helps prioritize actions and ensures targeted interventions to mitigate pollution in these critical areas. Now coming to the policies and programs, will just like to mention here very briefly because it will take a lot of time to explain each and every program. In addition to the aforementioned framework which we have dealt with, the legal framework, the scientific background, the administrative framework, certain key policy interventions and programs at national level have been introduced to influence and to control, manage air quality at local and regional levels. Policy decisions like introduction of BS6 auto fuel in Delhi NCR and emission norms were implemented in the year 2020. The BS3 and BS4 versions are almost, while BS4 is 5.5 times more polluting than BS6, BS3 is almost 11 times more polluting than BS6. So government took a radical decision aligning the fuel with BS6 standards in the Delhi NCR, which is a path-breaking initiative. Significant steps have been taken to mitigate industrial air pollution across the country. Emission standards have been set for over 80 industries under the Environment Protection Rules 1986, targeting key air polluting sectors such as thermal power plants, industrial boilers, lime kilns, brick kilns. For real-time surveillance of polluting sectors, the Central Pollution Control Board monitors industries through online continuous emission monitoring systems. In the waste management sector, amended rules mandate 100% ash utilization, and that is being monitored by a committee chaired by me as per the directions of NGT. Further, industries are categorized into different pollution potential groups, red, orange, green and white, to help prioritize enforcement efforts. A new blue category has also been notified recently, which is introduced for common facilities like the common effluent treatment plants and the STPs. Through frameworks like extended producer responsibilities, which is the backbone of the circular economy thrust of the government for converting waste into wealth, we are also ensuring that industries take responsibility for managing waste streams, which can result in air pollution if not properly managed, such as plastic waste, e-waste, battery waste. All these are now covered under the EPR regime, the market-driven way of converting waste into wealth, of controlling the waste which is generated, of effectively utilizing it. Additionally, the ban on single-use plastics effective from July 2022 has significantly reduced plastic-related pollution, marking a crucial step towards cleaner air and a more sustainable future. These wastes, if not properly managed, are burnt in open or processed in unscientific manner, resulting in air pollution. One of the key initiatives launched by the government is the National Clean Air Program, launched in 2019 with an objective to reduce the particulate matter concentrations by 20 to 30% by 2024, with updated targets of up to 40% reduction by 25-26. It follows a holistic and integrated approach. NCAP encompasses 130 cities, including both non-attainment cities and million-plus cities, and integrates multiple central initiatives such as the Swachh Bharat Mission, Smart City Mission, and the vehicle scrapping policy, all of which address local sources of pollution, including air pollution sources. In addition to convergence of resources through the central and state government schemes and cities' own resources, performance-based incentive grants are provided to cities through 15th Finance Commission grants to 48 million plus cities, urban agglomerates, and MOFCC's Control of Pollution Scheme to 82 remaining cities. The NCAP program is undergoing a review, and to make it more focused, to make it a challenge-based approach, all those initiatives are being taken to make it more user-friendly, more citizen-oriented, and that is being done at the moment. Private institutions play a vital role in air quality management efforts through public-private partnerships. These collaborations are instrumental in waste management and air quality monitoring efforts. Private laboratories are engaged in conducting industrial emission monitoring to verify compliance. CPCB also encourages private sector involvement, such as through financial assistance for establishment of paddy straw-based pelletization units, which help address stubble burning issues. Private entrepreneurs are setting up 15 paddy straw-based pelletization plants in NCR. Furthermore, NGOs, philanthropic organizations, and resident welfare associations contribute to raising public awareness. I would like to refer to one more important program which is concerning all of us, and that is Mission Life, Lifestyle for Environment for Nudging Behavioral Changes, a mission launched by Honorable PM at COP26 as an India-led global mass movement, and the ongoing Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam campaign launched on the occasion of World Environment Day. All these efforts collectively help us in protecting Mother Earth for all of us and for our future generations. Actions related to the implementation of the theme of Mission Life are included in the monitoring and implementation of NCAP. The targeted multi-pronged actions have led to notable reductions in PM10 concentration in 97 NCAP cities during the financial year 23-24 as compared to the base year of 2017-18. So the programs and policies have made a dent. It is for all of us to collectively carry this process forward, move ahead, and ensure that we are able to make this dent in places where these programs have not been implemented. For it is not only through NCAP, it is through all the government programs, it is through the synergy of resources, it is through the actions that all the departments take collectively. All that actually go into the control and management of air pollution. I would conclude by referring to two salient provisions of the Constitution, namely Article 48A in Part 4 of the Directive Principles of State Policy, which states that protection and improvement of environment and safeguarding of forest and wildlife is a responsibility of the state. The state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. The other part is related to all of us as citizens. The fundamental duties under Article 51A, where it says very clearly that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Tackling air pollution requires a whole of government and whole of society approach, looking to the complexity of the issues involved in the entire matter. It is through such collective will, determination, and collaboration, coupled with strengthening of our enforcement mechanisms and proactive efforts by the local bodies and communities, that we can achieve meaningful improvements in air pollution. This collective journey requires sustained efforts, scientific research and innovation, development, and a commitment to ensuring the well-being of our citizens and the preservation of our environment. Our vision for the future is clear. Through continuous innovation and evolution, we aim to strengthen India's air pollution prevention, control, and abatement efforts in collaboration with the stakeholders. I would like to quote Honorable Prime Minister. In his words, Prakriti and Pragati, and economy and ecology need to move together so as to ensure that the environmental safeguards are in sync with the overall development and growth of our economy. Together we can make a lasting impact on both our nation's growth and the protection and conservation of our environment, and contribute meaningfully to the well-being of Mother Earth. This is truly reflected in the motto of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, which was referred to by Chairperson NGT, which says very clearly, Prakriti Rakshati Rakshita, that is, nature protects if protected. Let's join hands in protecting and conserving Mother Earth for ourselves and for our future generations. Before I end, I would like to, extend my compliments to all the workers in the field, to the sweepers, to the last man in the area who is working to removing the dust, to removing the leaves, to actually, cleaning the roads, sweeping the roads, and carrying out all the positive interventions for protection of our environment, for cleaner air. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good afternoon. Honorable Shri Justice Joymala Bagchi, Chair of this session, other dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries off the dais, students, ladies and gentlemen. At the onset, I'd like to thank NGT for holding this National Conference on Environment 2025. I think this is very, very important. And for me as a clinician, it makes much more sense because I, as a clinician and a pulmonologist, see a lot of the effects that air pollution has as far as the general population is concerned. Air pollution is basically substance in the air which harms not only humans but also animals, vegetation and material. And it's very important to keep that in perspective because we're looking at one health and the health of the planet. But in my mind, air pollution is a silent pandemic and something that we need to address. It's a medical emergency, and I'll try and give you some facts based on clinical data as to why I feel it's a medical emergency. If you look at a recent paper, and this was published in Lancet 2020, which looked at 87 risk factors in more than 200 countries from 1990 to 2019 as part of a global burden of disease study, what it showed was that air pollution globally is now the fourth leading cause of death both in men and women, and it's also the fourth leading cause of what is known as disability-adjusted life years. What was also startling was that over these 19 years, the largest increase in risk exposure has occurred because of ambient pollutant particulate matter. This is followed by drugs, fasting blood sugar and high BMI. But air pollution is the leading cause which has caused this change in our disease pattern globally in the last 20 years. Also, in 2024, the Health Effect Institute published the State of Global Air article, their own data, and they estimated that in 2021, 8.1 million people died because of air pollution. This is more than the number of people who died because of COVID-19. And yet, we are not really concerned about the number of people who die because of COVID-19, because of air pollution. And that's predominantly because, unlike COVID or let's say dengue, where you can pinpoint that so-and-so person died because of COVID or so-and-so person died because of dengue, air pollution is a silent killer. It worsens the underlying condition, and therefore being able to say that so-and-so died because of being exposed to bad quality air becomes all the more difficult. And that's why you need a lot of data to be able to prove this point. But this paper also showed that household air pollution has actually come down. There was a 36% decrease in that globally because of better use of fuel in terms of biomass being used less and more use of LPG and other better quality fuel. But outdoor air pollution, ambient air pollution continued to increase, and it accounted for almost 30% of deaths because of low respiratory tract infection. So your pneumonia gets worsened if you are living in an area where pollution is bad. 28% deaths because of heart disease, ischemic heart disease, and almost 48% of deaths because of COPD, or chronic pulmonary obstructive disease. So I think there is enough data globally to say that air pollution can cause significant mortality. But even if you look at data from our own country, and there was an interesting paper published many years ago which looked at the epidemiological transition which has occurred in Indian states. It's a very nicely labeled nations within a nation, because each state in our country actually is a nation in itself. And it looked at the transition that was happening between 1990 and 2016 and showed that there was a transition in our clinical data, in the epidemiological data, from what was known as communicable diseases, maternal diseases, childhood diseases, to non-communicable diseases. One state started a transition way back in 1990, and that was the state of Kerala. But gradually, by 2004-2006, the burden of disease in our country shifted from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases. And again, one of the leading risk factors for this shift was air pollution. Other risk factors being malnutrition, dietary risk, high systolic blood pressure, and high plasma glucose. So if you look at all of these risk factors, they are lifestyle-related risk factors. So the burden of disease that we are seeing today, as far as health is concerned, is largely related to lifestyles and air pollution. In 2017, it was estimated that 1.24 million people in India died because of air pollution. But what is also seen in this article was that they looked at the deaths or the disability occurring because of air pollution and because of tobacco use. Now, we all have a lot of aggressive campaign against the use of tobacco when it comes to advertisements in newspapers, on the television, during movies, or even on the cigarette pack. But this article showed that in our own country, when we look at lower respiratory tract infections, heart disease, or COPD, air pollution causes more disability than the use of tobacco. So rather than saying that people are dying because of smoking, people are dying more because of exposure to air pollution. And I think that is something that we need to keep in mind. We've already had a discussion on the types of pollutants, both primary and secondary pollutants, and PM 2.5. There's also another sort of kid on the block, which is ultra-fine particulate matter, PM less than 0.1. And all of these particulate matter are important because they go down into our lungs, reach the alveoli, can cross into the bloodstream and enter our circulation, leading to significant harmful effects. So these are ultra-fine particulate matters where the diameter is so small, the aerodynamic diameter is so small that they are able to not only enter our lungs, but enter the bloodstream and therefore have a lot of systemic effects. And that's why it's important to keep in mind. And a lot of carcinogenics and other toxic substances, which are known as hitchhikers, get attached to these particulate matter and reach the lungs. So there is now more and more data which suggests that oxidative stress, epigenetic mechanisms is harming the whole body. So we talk of effects on the heart, we talk of effects on the lungs, but if you start looking at data, there's a lot of data which suggests that even the central nervous system, the brain is affected, higher chance of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinsonism is being linked to poor quality air, or people who are living in an environment where air quality is poor. Eye changes from dry eyes to conjunctivitis, to lung changes, to heart changes, and even metabolic syndrome, which drives non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, diabetes, and various other disorders, is also being linked more and more to air pollution. Osteoporosis being found in women is also being strongly linked with air pollution. So it's not only the heart and the lung. As these fine particles reach our various organs, they start causing damage to the whole body. And another vulnerable population that we don't talk of that much are pregnant women. In pregnancy, being exposed to high or poor quality air not only affects the mother, it also affects the fetus and the newborn. So there's enough data which suggests that intrauterine growth retardation, higher chance of stillbirths, even heart diseases or ventricular septal defects can occur much more if a mother is living in an environment where pollution tends to be very, very high. A paper published by the European Heart Journal looking at this is a position paper on air pollution, actually suggests that air pollution is as much a risk factor for heart disease as is high cholesterol or cigarette smoking. So I think it's very, very important for us to keep that in mind. Even if you start looking at asthma, there is a large number of data which suggests that long-term exposure to PM 2.5 has a significant adverse effect on childhood and adult asthma, and almost 1/3 of asthma cases are associated with long-term exposure to PM 2.5. I see a lot of students who come from different parts of India to study in Delhi, and when they spend some time here, a year or two, they start complaining of chest tightness, coughing, getting up in the night because of wheezing in their chest. All of this is a secondary effect of air pollution, which is affecting the lungs when they're living in an environment which is more and more pollutant. So even infectious diseases get aggravated by air pollution. There was a mention of latent tuberculosis getting aggravated, but even articles suggest that in areas where air pollution was bad, even there was higher mortality as far as COVID-19 was concerned. So I think it's very, very important for us to keep this in mind. And a more recent article, which was a modeling study which looked at mortality in 10 cities in India, suggested that for every 10 microgram per meter cube increase in a 2-day moving average of PM 2.5, there was a 1.4% higher mortality. And this found that it was not related only in the Indo-Gangetic belt, which we talk about, but cities like Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Pune, even Simla for that matter, had poor quality air, and this was contributing to higher mortality. Recognizing this fact, WHO actually brought down the guidelines, air quality guidelines in 2021. They brought down both the parameters for nitric oxide and PM 2.5 because the new data suggests that even the current standard can be harmful, and they actually said that there is no low limit for PM 2.5. We must try and have it as low as possible. It's also important to understand that we must also keep in mind the long-term effects as far as air pollution is concerned. We have been living in the Indo-Gangetic belt for years with very poor quality air. As a matter of fact, if you look at data from 2016 to 2024, almost 60 to 70% of days in Delhi have poor quality air, which is not acceptable. And except for the time when we had the lockdown where the quality of air improved, most years, more than 50% of the days, the air quality is not acceptable. And we have children and young people living in an environment where they have this poor quality air, which can actually be very harmful. Now, is it possible for us to do something? And as was mentioned, there are solutions. Both we found this happened way back in 1952. We had the London smog, where 4,000 people died in just 6 days, and that brought in legislation, that brought in a lot of legal rules which came into place, and this actually led to the air over the next decade improving very much as far as London was concerned. We've seen that in New Mexico, Los Angeles, and more recently in Beijing, where you had very poor quality air during the Beijing Olympics, but things have changed dramatically. It's also happened in our country itself, in New Delhi itself. I remember in the late 19s, we had very, very poor quality air, and we used to wonder what will happen. And then because of the Supreme Court registration, the ruling, CNG came in. And I still remember people said that CNG will cause a lot of problem. We'll have, the private vehicles will not be able to get CNG. But after CNG came in, if you look at the data, the air quality in Delhi actually improved in the early 2000s. But we were not able to really build on the gains that we had at that point in time. More diesel vehicle came in. There was no planned construction done during that point in time. We had a lot of economic development, and all of this led to the loss of the gains that we had in the early 2000s when CNG came in. So I think it's possible. It's something that we need to do, and I personally feel that scientists, planners, policymakers, environmentalists, all of us need to come together if we need to find a sustainable solution as far as this pandemic of air pollution is concerned, which is a silent killer. So I think this is very, very important that we have such conferences, such meetings, so that we can find a sustainable solution which is practical and which can be implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guleria. I now like to request Dr. Ganguly from IIT Delhi. We have limited time, so request him to focus on the key actions and solutions that could be undertaken.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor and privilege to be part of this panel discussion on air quality monitoring and management in reference to rising air pollution. So I thank NGT for giving me this opportunity. So all the previous speakers have already talked about, we have been hearing since morning that air pollution is a very serious problem, and that is adversely affecting not only just public health, but also responsible for altering weather patterns and affecting climate. So therefore, urgent action is needed to identify its key sources and implementation of effective solutions for cleaner air and a better air quality for our life. So air pollution includes both particulate matter, PM 2.5 and PM 10, as well as gaseous pollutants. But in India, the biggest concern right now is air pollution caused by the particulate matter, especially in terms of their adverse impacts on human health. Although it is worth mentioning here that some of this particulate matter air pollution originates from gaseous pollutants which later convert into particles in the atmosphere, and we call them secondary pollutants. And mostly this PM 2.5 is more harmful for human health as compared to PM 10, obviously, because PM 2.5 are actually more smaller particles, and therefore they can easily enter deeper inside our respiratory system and lungs and cause more adverse effects to human health. Our own research, as well as research carried out by other researchers across India, have shown that in terms of chemical constituents, PM 2.5 in India is dominated by carbonaceous aerosols, comprising mainly of organic aerosols and black carbon aerosols, which together contribute about 30 to 60% of total PM 2.5 mass anywhere, anytime in India. Out of that, organic aerosols actually dominate. They are anywhere between 50 to 55%, and black carbon or soot constitutes about 5 to 10% in terms of total PM 2.5 mass. This is followed by dust and mineral matter, which contribute about 20 to 30%, and this is further followed by about 5 to 15% of secondary inorganic aerosols like nitrate, sulfate, and ammonium. And in terms of source sectoral contributions, primary PM 2.5 emissions in India arise largely from residential biofuel sector, contributing about 30 to 45%. And next is agricultural biomass burning, 5 to 17%. Other sectors like energy sector contribute about anywhere between 10 to 25%. Industries, including large industries as well as MSMEs, they contribute about 15 to 25%, and vehicular emissions, transportation sector, including resuspended road dust, contribute the remaining 10 to 30%. And these organic aerosols, which dominate the PM 2.5 mass across India, originate largely from residential biofuel usage for cooking and residential heating, as well as traffic exhaust, as well as oxidation of some unsaturated vapors, which are released when we burn fossil fuel, leading to formation of secondary organic aerosols. However, both these species as well as sectoral contribution to PM 2.5, which I just mentioned, they vary across different air shades and seasons. So in India, the National Clean Air Program launched by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to understand the causes of the air pollution and solve the air pollution problem in India, largely focuses on 131 non-attainment cities that did not meet the National Ambient Air Quality Standards in the year 2017 based on ground monitoring data collected by CPCB and various state pollution control boards. However, the latest research shows that primary PM 2.5 emissions summed across all non-attainment cities across India, which are under the NCAP, contribute only a small fraction of total PM 2.5 at the state level as well as at the national level. For example, the total PM 2.5 emissions from various non-attainment cities in a large state like Uttar Pradesh contributes only 4% of its total PM 2.5. In Maharashtra, this percentage is about 17%, and generally this percentage varies from 1 to 20%. This is, I'm talking about contribution of non-attainment cities towards the total PM 2.5 pollution in their states. So that means 80 to 90% of the PM 2.5 emission sources in India, anywhere, in any state, are actually coming from small towns and rural places spread across the country. And the latest research also shows that out of the total PM 2.5 pollution in cities and states across India, significant contribution come from regional transport or from sources outside the city or outside the state, and therefore we need an air-shade approach to manage the air quality across India. For example, on an annual mean basis, Delhi's PM 2.5 air pollution is contributed almost equally by sources within the city, sources within Delhi NCR, and sources outside the Lee NCR. Of course, these contributions vary across different seasons. And in most large states across India, as well as on an all India scale, emissions of PM 2.5 are dominated by residential biomass fuel combustion for cooking and for water and space heating. So here are some suggestions that I have for mitigation of air pollution and also better management and monitoring of air pollution in India. So the city-centric approach for combating air pollution under the NCAP needs expansion. As in this city-centric strategy, we are actually missing out most of the dominant contributors of to PM 2.5, which is residential biofuel and agricultural biomass burning, because the sources of this are mostly in small towns and rural places spread across all over India. So for mitigation of air pollution problem, phasing out of solid fuels such as coal-based thermal power plants is well recognized worldwide. However, in the Indian context, we must prioritize completely getting rid of this residential biofuel usage through government schemes such as the Ujjwala Yojana, which involves distribution of LPG for cooking, and other schemes like Saubhagya scheme, which involves distribution of electric cookers, lights and heaters, in addition to slowly phasing out the coal-based thermal power plants while keeping the energy security of the country in mind and investing more in rapidly expanding renewable sources of electricity such as solar and wind power. Thus, modern forms of residential energy based on gaseous fuels or renewable electricity and fully replacing these biomass fuels are the central measures that are needed for the reduction of ambient air pollution across anywhere in India. In order to further the city-centric approach that we generally follow in India is that we focus too much on emissions from transportation sector, which is good because they contribute anywhere between 10 to 30% towards PM 2.5, but we mostly focus on emissions from private cars and taxis. But our data shows that from the transportation sector itself, the major emitters of PM 2.5 are actually heavy-duty vehicles which run on diesel, like buses and trucks. They contribute about 50% of the total PM 2.5, whereas the four-wheelers, private cars and taxis, they contribute anywhere between 20 to 25% of PM 2.5 coming from just the transportation sector alone. So we need to focus actually on getting rid of this diesel as a fuel for trucks and buses, and we should consider seriously switching to other solutions such as green hydrogen or other. And then next is in India we focus when it comes to compliance of emissions by industries. We focus on large industries, but the contribution of we should not forget that there is a significant contribution of PM 2.5 which are coming from medium and small scale industries. So we need to find ways how we can enforce them to comply to the environmental laws that are already there. And another important point I wanted to mention here is that whenever we come up with a technological solution to combat air pollution, we must consider the life cycle assessment and the life cycle costs and benefits of the proposed technology in order to understand the overall environmental impacts of this technology on greenhouse gas emission as well as water resources, thereby making sure that there are no unintended trade-offs happening between our clean air goals and climate change mitigation efforts, or also trade-offs between health impact of air pollution and health impact of heat stress associated with global warming. Finally, in order to strengthen the air pollution early warning system and decision support system that we already have in our country, established by the Ministry of Earth Sciences during extreme air pollution episodes in the country, which involves actually usage of chemical transport models to forecast the severe air pollution episodes, but it also involves assimilation of data, observed PM 2.5 data, which are collected from nearly 500 continuous air pollution monitoring stations, which are maintained by CPCB and SPCB across the country. However, these continuous monitoring stations managed by CPCB and SPCB are disproportionately distributed and predominantly located in urban centers, leaving vast rural areas and many small cities and towns unmonitored. So installation, we understand that installation and maintenance of this continuous air quality monitoring stations is very costly affair, and therefore adding more this kind of continuous air quality monitoring stations, especially in rural areas and small towns, is extremely challenging. However, the air pollution early warning system or the decision support systems during these air pollution episodes in India can be greatly improved if we adopt to, for example, low-cost sensors for air pollution monitoring across these rural areas and small towns, which of course must be regularly maintained and calibrated frequently. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ganguly. I apologize that we have come to the end of the time that was allocated for us, and so we're unable to take questions or comments from the audience, but hopefully we will be able to have that interaction in the time that we have for lunch and tea and so on. So I think during this session, I hope that all of you have been very much convinced, and the chairperson actually began by highlighting that there is no doubt whatsoever that air pollution has a big impact on our health. It also contributes to global warming and climate change, and it has also massive impact on the economy. And we already have estimates of how much percentage of GDP is lost. It also has an impact on agriculture. It was not mentioned today specifically, but air pollution actually reduces the yield of plants as well, because there's less sunlight actually reaching the plants. Justice Pushpa also very clearly talked about the different initiatives, laws, policies that we have, and so did Secretary Tanmayji. But I think in the morning, Attorney General actually highlighted that perhaps the multiplicity of policies, laws, and the lack of clarity really on who is ultimately responsible for enforcing all of these regulations that we have. And this varies between agencies, it varies from state to state. Justice Pushpa also highlighted the lack of technical capacity, especially at the state level in many of our bodies, and the need for more scientific research to base our policies on to form the foundation, but also to have much more enforcement authority and agencies which have the teeth to be able to take action when we know that certain rules are being violated. So we also heard about from Dr. Ganguly the breakup of the contribution of different sectors. It may vary geographically from place to place in India, but this is why these source apportionment studies are so important in order to take future action. So honorable judges, you are the backbone of the environmental justice system in India, and the NGT in particular can really bridge policy and action by holding states accountable, by fast-tracking green technologies, and also by amplifying community voices. And it's clear that air pollution does not respect any boundaries, whether it's state boundaries or national boundaries. And so, in fact, for the Indo-Gangetic Plain, it's going to be important to also work with our neighboring countries to adopt standards and to take action so that we progressively have a good target in the next 10 years to reduce the air pollution by a significant percentage. Let's try to be as ambitious as possible. I think we have the technology and the tools at our disposal really to do this. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to all the speakers today. Thank you.